The first collection that I am going to explain is the list. So in this video, we are trying to understand what is a list and how we can use list to do different tasks and run different operations. To give you a better understanding, in fact, I'm going to show you all the content through a Jupyter Notebook file. So let's go back to the environment. Oh, I need to just bear with me. Okay. And I created a Jupyter Notebook file for the list. You can find them on the GitHub and you can download them. So list is in fact one of the most versatile and widely used data structure in Python. And they will allow us to store and manage collection of data, a group of data, and the data type can be a different kind of data type, from numbers, strings, or other lists. I will show you how to use those. Let's see how we can create a list. To create a list, we need to put multiple value and separate them with comma inside a square bracket. So in fact, by writing a code look like that, we created a list. We call this list, so the name of the list is number, and we store 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in fact, we have 5 values inside the list, and then we can print the content of the list and we can check the type of these variable. So as you can see, the list contains 5 items and the data type for numbers is a list, which is a class. I will explain the class in the future videos and you will learn what is a class. Accessing elements. So now when we have a list, how we can access the element of the list. If you remember, we said list is it is a ordered collection. In fact, each value or each item or member of the list has a index, and the list try to keep the order of the item. So we can access each value in the or each item of the list using an index. For example, in this case, if you create a list of fruits, and if you want to access the first element, we can use the index, and the index started from 0. So 0, 1, 2. So if you say fruits index 0, in fact, it will return the apple, and it will save that one in the first fruit. And fruit with index 1, it will return banana, and it will save inside the second fruit. And if we try to print them, so the first fruit is apple and the second one is banana. To access sometimes we need to return a group of items or a list subset of the list. In this case, we can use the range. If you remember the string slicing, we discussed the same concept in the string. We can use the same concept in the list. For example, if you want to access a range of item from index 1 to 4. So in fact, this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, and this is the 4. But it will return only that one because the last one will not be included. So in fact, when we try to use the colon between the square bracket with two numbers, this is the start index and this is the end index. And it will return start from the start index until one index before the end index. So if you run that, it will return, it will start the start index is 1, 2, 3, and this is the 4, but it will not include the last one. We can access the items using the negative values or negative indexing. So in fact, negative indexing is start from the end and it starts from -1. So this is -1, -2, -3. So if you try to access the item, because sometimes you have a long list and you don't want to count from the beginning if you want to, for example, return something at the end of the list. So it's better to use the negative indexes. So for example, in this case, colors -1, it will return the blue last color. And if you try to return the second last color, we will say colors -2, and then we can print the values. As you can see, the last color is blue, which is a index -1, and the second last color is green, which is a index -2. Combining range with negative index. Another techniques to access item from the end is using the minus, for example, indexes and returning item from the end. For example, in this case, it will start from -3, -1, -2, -3, which is 3. And because we didn't mention anything as an end index, it will return all the element from -3 to the end of the list. And if you want, for example, return items, let's do, for example, sub list, create that one with numbers. And we say, if you say, for example, -3 until minus, for example, 1. Let's print that one as well. Sublist. So in fact, because it starts from -3, this is -3, because -1, -2, -3, and the last index is -1, which is that. In fact, it will return just 2 items for us. Adding element, how we can add element after creating a list. So the first method is append. We can use the append to add element to the end of the list. So append will try to add item to the end of the list. In this case, it will add 6 to the end, and the numbers, when we say numbers, this is the list that we created, and then we said append to the numbers new value, which is a 6. We can use the insert also to insert an item in a specific position. So append, always try to append or add the item at the end of the list. But if you want, for example, add a number in the middle of the list, you can use the insert. And the insert, the first parameter of the insert is the index. So in this case, we try to insert inside the index 2, and the value is 7. So in fact, this is index 1, this is index, this is index 0, 1, and 2, and it will try to insert 7 and index 2, and it will push the rest to the right side. So as you can see, it will insert 7 inside the index 2 and push the rest to the right side. And we have the extend. So extend method is really useful when you want to, for example, combine two lists together or add element of another list to the current list. For example, in this case, the fruits 1 is apple and banana. We have fruits 2, cherry and date. And then we extended the fruit 1 by adding element from the fruit 2. And after that, in fact, fruits 1 will contain all the items, and the item from fruits 2 will be added to the first one. Concatenation, so another way to extend is to use the plus operator to concat to list. So the result is similar to the extend, but The difference between plus operator and extend method is that with the extend method you can add any other collection to the list, but with the concatenation you can only concat a list to the current list. So the extend content, for example, the extend parameter can be a tuples or a dictionary or a set, but with the plus we can only add two lists together. How we can remove an element from the list? So the first approach or the first method to remove an item using the remove and passing a value. So in this case, we want to remove the 4. So this 4 is not the index. This is the value. We want to remove the 4 value or item with value 4 from the list. And if you run that, the result will look like that. It will remove the 4. But if you look at the index is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So as I mentioned, this value for remove is this value here. It's a real value for the element. It's not an index. And another things that we need to consider when we are using the remove method is only remove the first occurrence of that value. For example, if we have a list look like that 1 2 3 4 5 4 6 4, so we have 3 4s here, and when we say remove 4, it will start from the left side and it will remove only the first element with the same value. So if you look at that, it will remove the first 4, but the rest will be stay. Another method to remove an element and get the value of that element is the pop. So using the pop method, we can say remove an element in the specific index and return the value of that element. In this case, index is 2. So this is the difference. This is the index. This is the difference between pop and remove. Pop need an index, but remove need a value. So when we say pop 2, in fact, it will start from here 0, 1, 2, and it will try to pop or remove this item in the index 2, and it will return the value of this item. So we can save that one popped item, and then we can check the popped item with the new version of the list. So in fact, it removed the 3 from the list. If you don't specify or determine any index for pop, it will remove the last item of the list. So in fact, in this case, it will remove the 5 from the list and it will return the value of the 5. Another method to remove an element using the del method or delete function. So delete function needs it will delete a specific element from the list. In this case, we said remove item in index 2 from the numbers, and then we try to print the list. So in fact, index 2 is 3, and it will remove that one. If you don't specify any index for delete function, it will delete the entire list. So if you want to delete the whole list, you need to use the delete function without any index for your list. But you need to be careful, because if you try to do that and then if you try to access these lists, it will show you an error. So let me for example, if I try to paste this line here and to convert the rest to a comment. So if you try to run that, definitely it will show an error, as you can see. Why? Because it says name number is not defined. Why? Because we deleted the whole list, and Python interpreter, it doesn't know anything about the number now, because it doesn't exist. It's completely removed from the memory. So in this case, I use the try to avoid this problem. I will explain that one in the future videos, how to handle the exceptions using the try. So in fact, I said try because there is some sort of code that can cause some problem and error in the code. I put this code inside the try, and then I said if something's happen, if an exceptions happen, so print this code for us. So if the number is not null, it means if it is still exists, so it will print the number, otherwise it will print this message. So if you run that one, because we deleted the whole list, some error, an error will be raised here or exception raised here, and then we try to catch this error here, and we print the message number is deleted completely. Then another method to completely remove the content of the list instead of the whole list. If you want to remove all element of the list, we can use the clear function. So we have the number, a list of numbers, then we set numbers.clear. It will remove all the element, but the number will still exist in the memory, but it doesn't have any element. Counting element. So if you want, for example, count a specific element, how many, for example, times a value is repeated. In this case, we can use the count, and we can say count 2 for us. How many times 2 the value of 2 is repeated in the list. So we have 1, 2, and 3. So 3 times value of 2 is repeated in this list, and we set numbers.count 2. It will count the value of 2, and it will return that one, and we store that one, and we print the value. So the number of 2, or the count of 2, is 3. Then also we can check if an item exists in a list or not using the in. So if you remember, this is the membership operator. So if you have a list of colors, and then if you try to check if yellow in color, so if it exists in the color, we will print yellow is in the colors list. Otherwise, we will say yellow is not in the color list. So in fact, because yellow is not exist in the color list, it will print the second statement. Iteration through list item. If you remember, we mentioned that all collections has iteration characteristic. So in fact, we can iterate through all item of the list using for example, for loop or while or another techniques. So in this case, let's see. We have a list of tasks. The first task is buy groceries. Second, finish homework, go to gym, read a book. And then we print to-do list, and then if we try to print the to-do list, we set for task in tasks. So the tasks is the list, and every time the for loop try to grab one of the list element and assign these element to the task, and then we can print the task. And then we will go up, and it will select the next item, assign this item to the task, and it will print the next task. So in fact, at the beginning, it will print the to-do list, as you can see here, and then it will start to assign items from list, the task list to the task, and we will print them one by one. So for the next one, it will print that one. So this is the way to iterate through the item of a list. We can use the while loop. It is the similar, but with while loop we need to have an index of the item because the condition, we need to check a condition, and we have an index which is started from 0, and then we said until while index is less than the len of the tasks. So the len, it will return the number of item in the list, which is 4. In this case, until index is less than 4, we try to print the task element in this index. The first time index is 0, so it will print the item in the index 0. And then we will add 1 to the index, and we will go up and check the condition, and so on. We will print until the end of the list. Using a range with a for loop. Also, exactly, we can use the range. So we can say for index, in this case, we have the same to-do list, and then we use the index and the range function. The range function, we pass the length of the task. So in fact, the length of the task is 4, and the range function will generate a range of 0 to 4. So in fact, it will create the same result as a while loop. And list comprehension. This is a very important concept. List comprehension is a really concise way to create a new list when you want to create a new list from the current list. So you can use the list comprehensions. So let's see if you don't have a list comprehension, what we need to do. For example, if you have a to-do list, look like that. So this is the beginning. We have a list of the tasks that we want to do, and then we want to convert all the character for each item to the uppercase. So we created another list, uppercase tasks. At the beginning is empty. If you want to do without the list comprehension, if you want to convert the tasks or the characters for each item to the uppercase, we need to use a for loop and take each element from the task and then apply the upper method, because each task is a string. This is a string, and we convert this string to uppercase using the upper function of the string, and we said this is uppercase, and then we add the uppercase task to the uppercase tasks list. At the beginning, this list is empty, and we add the uppercase task to that list. And then we can print the task in this list one by one. So if you run this, so in fact, we have almost 3 lines of code to convert, or 4 or 5. Yeah, at the moment, if we remove the empty line, we need 4 lines of codes to create a new list. But we can use list comprehension instead of that. So how we can do that? We have the original list here, and we created a new list, but in this case we said let to extract the task from the original tasks list, and for each task we said convert the task to the upper case and store them inside a new list. So in fact, if we try to run an operation using using the iteration inside the square bracket and do some things on each element of a list, we call this comprehension. So in fact, we squeeze this 4 line in 1 line, and it is really useful and easy to remember. So in fact, we said for each task inside the tasks list, convert these tasks to the upper and store them inside a new list, and assign this list to the uppercase tasks, which is a new list, and then we can print that one, and it will generate the similar output. Or another example, if you have a list of numbers and if you want to create another list to store the squares of those numbers, so we can say for each number such as x inside the numbers, which is this list, so try to use the exponential operators and try to calculate the squares and then print them. So if you try to print the squares output, so 1 times 1 will be 1, 2 times 2 will be 2, 3 times 3 will be 9, 4 times 4 16, and 5 times 5 is 25. Another method to iterate through the list is using the enumerate. So in fact, if we need the value of each item with the index of the item, we can use the enumerate function. So in fact, we have a list here, the same to-do list. Then we print the to-do list, and then we said for index and task in enumerate task. So enumerate task, it will get the list and it will pick one item with its index, and it will return this item with the index. So in fact, we will, with the enumerate, each time we will return one item with its index. So the first value will be index and the second will be the real value of that item. And then we said let to print that item, the index of that item plus 1, because the index starts from 0. I added 1 and then print the same task. So in fact, we see some things look like that. The to-do list, the first item or to-do list is buy grocery. So this is the index plus 1. At the beginning, index is 0 plus 1 will be 1, and the task is buy groceries. Then the enumerate will return the index of 1 with the value of finish homework, but we will add 1, so it will print 2, and the value of the second item or index 1 is finish homework, and so on. Another important function or functionality for the list is sorting. It is really important, especially in data analysis and data science application when you want to work on some sort of data, and it is important to sort them. For example, think about the scenario. If you have, for example, weather information. So if somebody give you a list of temperature for 1 month, and if they ask you to sort these temperature, for example, from the higher value to the smallest value, so how you can do that? And this is the sorting functionality of the list that you can utilize and employ to get the sorted list. So sorting a list in Python, whether ascendingly or descendingly, is a common operation that allows you to organize data in a meaningful way. For example, if you have a student's grades, so if your grades after the exams is something look like that, if you want to sort them ascendingly, so from lowest to highest. So how we can do that? We have two options. One options is using the sorted method and pass the list to this method. It will sort all the item inside the grade for us in ascending order, and then we can print them, or we can directly sort item using the sort function, and it will sort the item inside the grade. So with the sorted function, it will return another, it will create another list for us, and we need to assign that one to a new list or the current list. But with the sort function, it will sort all the item in the place, in the same place, in the same list. So if you run this, as you can see, the result for both methods will be similar. The lowest value is 76, and it will goes up until the highest value, which is 95. We can do the same things in a reverse order. So if you want to have this grades in a descending order, so in fact from the highest to the lowest, what we need to do, we need just to pass the reverse parameter. So this parameter, we using this parameter, we will try to tell the sorted and sort function to reverse the value, so to sort them from the highest to the lowest. The rest is similar. So in this case, as you can see, the first item is the highest value, and then the last item is the lowest value. How we can copy a list? So to copy a list or create a copy from the existing list, we call them shallow copy sometimes. We have two methods. One of them we can using the slicing, or we can use the list constructor. But let's see what will happen if we don't use those. For example, if you have an original list, and the original list contain 3 items, 1, 2, 3. And if you assign this original list using the equal operator to the, or using the assignment operator to the copy list. So in fact, we try to create a copy, but the assignment operator does not create a copy of the original list. In fact, it just create a pointer to the same place in the memory which is original list is located. And if we try, for example, to change a value in the index 0 for the copy list, in fact, it will change the content of the original. Why? Because these copy list is just pointing to the same place in the memory which is the original list is pointing. So if you try, after changing the value in the copy list, if you try to print the original list value, in fact, we will see that the 1 converted to 9. So why? Because as I mentioned, this copy list, it's not created a copy of this list item. It's pointing to the same place in the memory. So to create a copy, as we mentioned, we have two options. We can use the slicing. So if you have an original list such as that, so then we can say we want to create a copy of the original list using the slicing from so without determining the start and the end in the slicing. So in fact, we want all the element in the list, and it will create a copy of the original list in another place in the memory, and it will assign or point the shallow copy to that place. And if you change the first item of this copy, it will not change the original list. So also we can do the same things using the list constructor. So constructor is a specific function or method inside the class. List, if you remember at the beginning, we mentioned that a list is a class inside the Python, and each class has a constructor. We can pass one list to the list constructor to create a copy of this one. So in fact, if we put the original list inside the parentheses with the list at the beginning, we will create a copy of this. And we call that one copy 2, shallow copy 2. And if we change the shallow copy 2, the first item of shallow copy 2 to 9, it will not change the original one. So we printed the same things, the original list with the shallow copy. Let's see what's happening. So if you look at that, after changing the value for the shallow copy, after creating the shallow copy one and changing the item or element in the index 0 to 9 and printing the original list and shallow list, the original list stay as it is, but the value for the shallow copy one changed to 9. It is the same for the second copy that we created. Another very important concept is nested list. So nested lists in Python are lists that contain other lists as their elements. So until now, all the lists that we try to work with them, they have a simple element. So each item is a simple value, a number or a string. But sometimes we want to put this list as an item inside the current list. So nested list allow you to create more complex data structure like tables or matrices, where each element of the outer list can be another list. This concept might sound a bit abstract, but let us look at an example. For example, if in a school, if you want to create a student roster, so if you want to keep the information of the student who they register inside the school, how we can keep those information inside the list. In this case, we need the nested list. So student roster in this case is a list. If you can look at that, because we have the square bracket at the beginning and the end, so it is a list. But the first item before the comma, if you look at that, the first item, it is a list, is not a value. So in fact, we have 4 items here, but each item is a list. And in fact, we put one list inside another list. Because of that, we call them nested lists. But each item or each list or inner list has a different value. The first element is the name of the student, age of the student, grade of the student, and the list of the courses that student has selected. So, for example, Alice is 17 years old in the 11th grades, and it has math, science, and history. And we have information of the next student, which is Bob, 16 years old, 10th grade, and the courses is English, math, and art. So the student roster is a list containing 4 student records, where each record is represent a list, and each student record is itself a list containing the student name, which is a string, age, which is a number or integer, grade, which is a string, and another list again. So it's get too complicated, or it's not too complicated, it's a 3-level nesting. This list inside the another list, and this list is inside another list. How we can access the item in this sort of list, let us see. So to access the item, we need to use the nested indexing. For example, for Bob, if you want to find the age of the age for Bob, so we can say Bob age equal student roster. Student roster is that list. And Bob is index 1, because this is index 0 and this is the index 1 exactly. And age is index 1 inside this list. Why? Because the first one is the name, This is index 0 and this one is index 1. So in fact, we said for record 1 inside the student roster, select the item in the index 1, which is the age. And then we can print that one. Or if you want to accessing the second course Bob is enrolled in. So the second course is math. So how we can access the information of Bob? So it is index 1. Using the student one, the first index is contained the information of Bob. But inside this list, the third, because this is 0, 1, 2, and 3, the index 3 is contained the information of the courses, and from these courses we can find the second item or second course using the index 1, and we will return the value for that one. So if we, oh sorry, I need to run that one before we didn't create the list. So this is the list at the moment. You have this list, as you can see, one item, second item, third item, and fourth one. Okay, and if you run that again, as you can see, Bob age is 16, and we use the nested index. The nested index, the first index for finding one of these lists, and then the second index to finding a value inside this list, which is here, and so on. We can also iterate through the nested list. In this case, for example, we said for student in student roster, let to select get the list of courses for the current student. In fact, so each time it will return a list, and student will be a list. So why? Because each item of the student roster is a list. Okay, so the student will be a list, and the third item in this list, the third item, if you go up, this is 0, 1, 2, 3. The third item is a list of the courses that they enrolled. So get the list of courses for the current student, and then we said print the student index 0 inside the student. The index 0 is the name of the student. And then we said also try to print the courses for the current student and put them together, join them. Join is a method of a string class, and it will join the list of item or the item inside this list using a comma together, and we will print them. So if you run that, so as you can see, we mentioned that Alice's courses is math, science, and history. Bob's courses is English, math, and art, and so on. So in fact, we iterate through the nested list, and we access different information for each item. Also, we can add or modify data inside the nested list. For example, in this case, if you want to add a new course, for example, Spanish, there's a new course, and we want to add that one for Alice. So Alice in the roster list, it is index 0, and the list of the courses is index 3 for each student. And we said append this new course, which is Spanish, to the list of the courses for first student. And then if you try to print the roster, item 0, which is the information for the Alice, we can see Alice information changed, and almost we add the Spanish at the end of the course list. So in fact, nested lists are a powerful way to represent structured data in Python, and they are commonly used for tasks that involve tabular or hierarchical information. Somehow we try to show you how to use those, but I think it is a good idea to practice by yourself. So let's see some exercises. The first exercise, student grades. Create a nested list representing a classroom of students and their grades in different subjects. Calculate and print the average grade for each student. For example, if you have something look like that, the classroom, so we have three students here, name of the student and the grade for that student. Now what you need to do, you need to calculate and print the average grade for each student. So you need to calculate the average of those numbers for each student and then print the name of the student with the average for each of them. Second one, inventory management. Imagine you have a store with different products and quantities. Create a nested list representing the store inventory. Write code to update the quantity of specific product and another piece of code to add a new product to the inventory. So for example, for our shop, this is our current inventory. We have apple, 100 apple, bananas, 75, cherries, 50. Now, after you need to write a code to update, for example, apple quantity to 120. So write a code here that can update this value, our inventory. And then write another piece of code to add grapes with the quantity of 60 to the list or to the inventory list. Another exercise, to-do list organizer. Create a program that manages to-do list for multiple peoples. Each person has a name and a list of tasks. Allow user to add tasks for a specific person, remove tasks, and display each person task. For example, if we have a list for peoples, and for each people we have a to-do list. So in fact the first person is Alice and it has two to-do lists, or the Bob, it has to-do list, two item. And then when, for example, Alice complete buy groceries, so we need to remove, for example, buy groceries. In fact, you need to remove one item from this list. So then the list should be look like that. So Alice then has only one item. Or add a task, walk the dog for Bob. So in fact, after adding a new task, the list should be look like that for the to-do list for Bob. And the last exercise, sales report. Create a sales report for a store with different product and display sales data. Use a nested list to represent the store sales. Write code that calculate and display the total sale for each product. So for example, in this case, we have a different product and we have a sell information. For example, we sell 50, 60, 75 for apple, and then we have 40, 55, 70 for bananas. So you need to calculate and display the total sale for each product. For example, at the end you need to print apple's total sale, 185, and so on. You can find the solution on the GitHub repository that I added the link in the description of the video.